Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions regarding this watch. Today, this one's personal. It's one of my favorite watches of the last 2 years. From H. Moser Cie of German-speaking Schaffhausen, Switzerland, comes the Endeavour Perpetual Tantalum, a case made of steel and tantalum with an engrossing translucent Grand faux enamel dial that features a hammered-style white gold base in abyss gradient blue. So this watch, in the hand, it has the feel of gold because that is an inherent quality of this mystifying blue-gray tantalum material. It's very dense, like a precious metal. The watch is 42 in diameter, 13.6 millimeters thick, 48.4 from lug tip to lug tip, and it has a very conventional 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. On my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, one of the finest qualities of the watch from an ergonomic standpoint is that the case back and even the case back crystal are cambered and arced, so it curves cleanly around the wrist and seems to hug the wrist. My wrist, again, is 16 centimeters in circumference. You could see in this down the barrel shot that the lugs are not over the edge of my wrist. The watch is thinner than you think. With a concave bezel, it will slide under a dress cuff. Here's the over-the-top shot, which shows the lugs are out to the edge of my wrist, but not beyond. Keep in mind this always exaggerates the width of the watch because I'm pulling the strap tightly. It's always the down the barrel that gives you the best gauge. So I'd say this watch would wear well on a wrist as small as 15 centimeters circumference. The strap is a minimally tanned kudu leather that features a light gray coloration, a monotone stitch. You could see that we have a sheer cut side lacquered for refinement, a little bit of stuffing or bolstering closer to the case. Calfskin lining on the underside. This is a Moser factory strap in excellent condition. Moser uses curved spring bars so that the lugs can be drilled very close to the case with no impediment to the motion of the strap. So drilling the lugs close improves small wrist fit, but that can also create a stiffness as the strap is pressed against the case flank. The way around that is to use a curved spring bar, and Moser does. Now, taking a quick look at the buckle, this is an unusual feature on a Moser watch, a full deployant clasp. In general, Moser watches come with pin buckles, so to have the full clasp, it's a big upgrade, and then it makes it a lot harder to drop the watch. And you can see this one has twin triggers, so you must press the triggers to pop it open. It cannot simply fly open. Excellent security given the weight and value of this watch. Now, tantalum, heavy like gold, but with a color unlike any other metal. Here you can see it's been brushed, but it's also been mirror finished. Edouard Melon, the CEO of Moser, told me that they were wearing out about one set of tools per case made in this series. So they can't make too many of them, and production is constrained by the rate that the tools are wearing down and the cost of building these tantalum cases. It has a otherworldly radiance. It really does look as though it's some fusion of black and blue, not separately as on a Rolex GMT bezel, but fused together. And you can see how fluid it is. That's always a quality of the Endeavour case. A concave bezel all the way around, but it flows broad at 12 and 6. The case hollows are first machined and then hand-finished to create this mirrored recess. And then we have the satination at the mid-case. The case back curved and arced to better fit the wrist. And note that the sapphire matches that camber. It's an incredibly difficult thing to do, to make a sapphire like that that's also water-resistant. And yet the watch is water-resistant, 30 meters, just like any other dress watch. The dial is what Moser calls a purity dial. So their standard dials have printing and calibrations and numerals. Their concept dials feature no adornment whatsoever, and then their purity dials have a minimum of references. So here we have basically the four corners. We've got 12, we've got 3, we've got 6, and we've got 9, if you include the power reserve indicator and the date. The watch is a unique take on Grand faux enamel. So the dial is made of white gold. That's the base. It has this incredible chiseled or hammered style texture. And then on top of that, layers of enamel, vitreous glass enamel, amounting to 4 different pigments, are used to create this gradient smoked fume fade. And This is abyss blue, as Moser has it. The gradient fades are a very signature Moser element. And because so many of these design elements are strong design identities associated with the brand, there's no need to put the company name on the dial. You know who makes this. And because Moser watches are all 95 to 100% Swiss made, they don't put Swiss made on the dial because they figure that only entails 60% Swiss value. So rather than labeling the watch Swiss-made and implying a potentially lower standard, they skip it altogether. The people buying this watch know exactly where it comes from. It is a perpetual calendar, as designed by Andreas Streller. And Andreas Streller is a specialist in stealth complications, so basically taking very complex things and making them very elegant and hidden when they're not needed. So we have a perpetual calendar, and here's how it works. We have a large disc for the date. It's actually two superimposed, more on that in a moment. Then we have this little stub index at center. So you have 12 hours and 12 months. So that little index indicates the month. So you see it's pointing towards 6, and that's 3. So this would be June 3rd. Now, it works in both directions. You can see how I can turn it in either direction. Also note the presence right there of two superimposed discs that allow this very large numeral to be used without requiring a watch that's the size of a pocket watch. So bidirectional setting, and there is no time of the day. By the way, it uses, as you can see, a 28-day base month. Don't worry, it's working just fine. But there is no time of the day when you might adjust this with the quick set that could damage the perpetual calendar. And that is absolutely critical because most perpetual calendars have a nighttime danger zone when you can break the watch if you attempt to set the calendar. Not on this one. There's also a fascinating mechanism built into the crown that's largely unadvertised, and it's the double pull system. So the first time you pull the crown, it stops you from pulling the crown out all the way and activating the hacking seconds. So the idea being, if you want to set the calendar, you can't accidentally pull the crown out all the way, stop the watch, and budge the hands that show the time. So rather than making that mistake, the first time you pull, it locks you in the intermediate position. If you do want to hack the movement and set the time, you pull a second time, and then it allows you to freeze the seconds hand in place and do your setting. So it does feature a stop seconds function. You just have to remember, if you're going to synchronize this to a reference time, pull the crown once and be ready for the hand to arrive at 60 so that your next pull really will stop the seconds hand in the correct place. That's very important. Power reserve indicator. The watch is advertised as 7 days by Twin Barrels, but in reality, it'll run for almost 9. 7 days is the chronometric power reserve, during which it keeps the best time. We have faceted leaf hands at center. You can see one of them has been curved on a miniature rolling pin to prevent any kind of optical illusions, and also to clear the sapphire on the dial side. Now on the back, by the way, note there's a little trigger on the side. That is there to help you set the leap year part of the perpetual calendar. Streller, when he designed this system for Moser, reasoned that you don't need to see the leap year every day, so it doesn't need to be on the dial side of the watch. Here it is. You set it with this little trigger. You can see the levers that operate it. 2 barrels. You can see golden chaton cups fixed by screws. That's a nod to the way watches were made during the historic era of H. Moser and Cie, back in the 19th and 20th century, when jewels would be pressed into precision golden cups, and those would be fixed into bridges and plates using screws. You can also see that the entire train is pretty much chaton set, each one held by polished screws. We have a full balance bridge and a free sprung balance for shock resistance, and what's fascinating here is that we have 2 hairsprings horizontally opposed, both flat, geometrically identical. So in one position, any given position, one of these will be inclined to cause the watch to run faster, the other will cause it to run slower. Switch up the position, and that tendency might be reversed. But because they're always equal and opposite, the one will slow the balance by the same margin that the other speeds it up, achieving, without a tourbillon, what a tourbillon can only achieve in a pocket watch format. So this is a wristwatch solution to the problem that was solved in pocket watch format by a tourbillon, canceling out the effects of gravity. 2.5 hertz, so 18,000 vibrations per hour. We have a solid gold escapement here, 14 karat gold, mechanical grade, to reduce the need for lubrication and reduce friction. And then this movement is actually quite large. you can see it fills this large case, and it is 34 millimeters in diameter. So Moser, a true manufacturer, building the movement to fit the case, not settling for whatever is available off the shelf of a supplier. Now, there's more going on here because Moser makes its balance, its hairspring, and yes, that solid gold escapement too, through its precision engineering subsidiary. These are components that very few brands can manufacture in-house. Even a lot of manufacturers, like for example Zenith, go outside the company to get balances and hairsprings. Also important to note, this entire escapement and balance assembly lifts out, so it can be replaced with a pre-oiled, pre-regulated modular replacement at service. That is the most time-consuming part of a watch to service, so the modularity allows this watch to return to your wrist even sooner. You can also see that there are beautiful double-crested Côte de Genève across the bridges. There's snailing on the outer faces of the bridges. All screw heads are mirror finished. There is a machine-applied but very handsome and worthwhile bevel on the edge of the bridges. Satination across the balance bridge. You could see there's satination on the crown wheel core, a black polished click, and then a swan's neck satinated click spring. All of this 30 meters water resistant. One of the coolest watches you could buy at any price, and one of my all-time favorites. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.